Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Classroom Matters podcast with me, your host, Christy Houle. And today I am delighted to sit down and talk with Madonna Hanna. Now, she is an award-winning educator, author, athlete, and inspirational speaker. She helps individuals of all ages believe that anything is possible when you work hard and have passion. She truly believes that when people drop kick the drama in their lives, anything is possible. Madonna is a living example of that statement and her goal to utilize her skills, talents, and experiences to assist others with achieving their goals and dreams while building self-esteem. Drop kick the drama. I love that, Madonna. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, I am certainly glad to be here. Glad to be speaking with another educator, and it's just really exciting. Thank you.
So, okay, we're going to dive right in, Madonna, because I have tons of questions for you, and I want to try to get to all of them in our time together. So let's just start by telling our listeners a little bit about your background. You know, our listeners are majority educators. We talk a lot about educational environment, settings, what's happening in the world of education. So with that being said, tell us a little bit about your background and the journey to what you're doing today.
Thank you very much. My background professionally started with my fashion career. I was a retail executive at a major department store in New England at a time when there weren't many colored executives, because Boston very, very conservative. From working for one of the largest department stores in New England, I went on to work for a national women's apparel manufacturer. From there, well, my husband decided he wanted to move to Washington State. Upon moving here, I saw an opportunity to teach in vocational education, to teach fashion marketing. That will bring me up to what I'm doing now. I retired in 2012. Presently, I am acting in a play that's going to be opening up in a couple of weeks. Something Wicked This Way Comes. So I'm having a fabulous second act. All right. I'm also a competitive amateur sprinter, which I became at the age of 57. That's a whole other story, but I will be competing in the National Senior Games in May. And I am a public speaker, motivational speaker. Right now, I am working with 2 different school districts on various anti-bullying projects, actually adapting projects that I've already done, and I'm sure we will touch on it a little bit later. And my track coach and I are in the process of putting together a special needs writing project, something else that I developed while I was at the Bremerton School District that evolved out of my anti-bullying project.
Okay, so like I said in the intro, so many interesting things that you've done, because you've already just talked about being an educator, talking about anti-bullying, your experiences with that, which I want to get into next, being an athlete, being a motivational public speaker. So many things that you are doing that are so powerful. But I really want to talk now about the bullying. I want to talk to you a little bit about some experiences that maybe you've had in your life, because, you know, we're in a much different place in education now than we were even 3 years ago. Right? It's hard to believe that, but with the pandemic and with everything that's happened, we really truly are. So around the topic of bullying, talk to us a little bit about your experiences with that, both as a younger child and an adolescent into adulthood.
Well, it's a good thing I developed a good sense of humor and survived. Oh my goodness. I was raised in a very conservative white suburb of Boston. In my entire elementary school, there were 3 colored kids at the time, in my elementary class, I was the only person who was my color. There were approximately 30 students in the classroom, but there were 4 little white boys that made it their job to constantly bully me because of the color of my skin. And from grade to grade to grade, boy, there they were. In junior high school, there were 8 colored kids. And an incident that I'm going to share happened in gym class. I'm going to tell you, I weighed all of 99 pounds. And after gym class, going back into the locker room, I saw that my locker door was open. My wallet was gone. 2 white girls walked over to me. One of them threw my wallet at me. It was empty, of course, called me the N-word, and then shoved me into the locker, scratching me up, and I was bleeding. And I was so scared because this was the first physical attack that I'd ever had, because everything else was just verbal. I went to the gym teacher. Here I am crying, shaking, and I told her what happened. She looked at me and said, "Now, Madonna, those are nice girls and they wouldn't do anything like that." I just wanted to die. I did, because I just felt so trapped. I was between a rock and a hard place, because when you go to your teacher, you're hoping she's going to do something about it. I walked back to my locker and there were those 2 girls. They weren't calling me the N-word this time, but they were calling me a tattletale. It's like, what can I do? What absolutely can I do? For anyone who's ever been bullied for whatever, and I didn't know this at the time, first of all, I didn't want to be the color that I was, and I wish something could be done about it. And you just think this is your whole life, and this is how it's always going to be. But later, I learned, of course, that people can be bullied for anything, because they're tall, because they're short, they've got curly hair, they've got straight hair, where they live. But I'm not thinking about that at the time. Fast forward to me working as a manager at a downtown store. A customer, a white female customer, came into my department, had a situation, talked to my sales lady about it, and then my sales lady said, "Oh, my manager will take care of that." The customer looked at me and said, "I want a real manager." My sales lady didn't get it. I got it. Having been bullied, and I can say now, thank goodness I was bullied, because I developed a thick skin and I knew how to handle myself. And I very graciously called an assistant white manager from the hardware department, not the junior department from across the floor, who also knew my merchandise. Here she came. The customer was so happy to have a white manager. She explained the problem, and the white manager said, "Oh, ma'am, I wish I could really help you, but I don't know anything about this merchandise. It's Miss Beauclair's department. Don't you know that woman left the department?"
Wow.
All because of the color of my skin. And as she was leaving, I said, "Have a nice day, and thank you so much for coming into Jordan Marsh." And one other incident that was significant was the buyer for that department did not like me because of the color of my skin. And one day she just went after me. She called me the N-word, and she attached a few more words with that. And it turned into an incident for the store. But thankfully, the top executives came in, took care of things very quickly, and it was resolved. And eventually the buyer and I became very cordial with each other. That was another incident where the buyer, who outranked me as an executive, tried to bully me. And I just very calmly stood up for myself and told my boss that either you move me from this department or I'm going to quit. I was very gracious about it. But like I said, having been bullied earlier in my life and growing that thick skin helped me to resolve a situation without being angry, without giving in to that other person, because that's what that bully wants. They want to make you miserable. They want to make you cry because they're getting energy from it. It's fun.
So you said that when the young girls were giving you trouble when you were in elementary school, you didn't want to be the color that you were. At
Yeah,
what age do you think that changed for you?
it changed my senior year. Oh, wow. This still brings back so much emotions to me. There's a sophomore named Beth that I carry in my heart, and I share her story with students and people when I go out to speak about bullying. Beth was Beth was a sophomore who was 5'11", maybe near about 280 pounds. Her eyes were crossed. She wore thick glasses. You can just get the picture, okay? And kids would tease her all the time. And inwardly, I was happy when they teased her because they weren't teasing me at the time. And anybody who has ever been bullied, you have feelings like that, that this time it's not me. The thing about Beth was that she was in the choir and she was on the drill team. When she was in the choir, kids would say, "Oh, she's wearing a pup tent because there isn't a row big enough for her." And when she was on the drill team, of course, she was the tallest, whitest person out there, and our colors were black and orange. People would shout out that she looked like the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown's Great Pumpkin, because she was wearing an orange jacket. Beth got cancer. And when you're in high school, you're not thinking about, especially in the 70s, you're not thinking about kids having cancer because older people have cancer. She was out. She was absent for a while, returned. She had lost a lot of weight. She was, I would say maybe she weighed about 120 or so. But I'll tell you, she looked absolutely gorgeous. She had the straight hair. She had a Jackie Kennedy shift on. I mean, everybody was like amazed. Like it was like kids wanted to be her friend now because it was like, whoa, she's gorgeous. Looked like a teen model. I remember that being a Wednesday. And when I saw her, I saw this glow. Monday, the following Monday, the principal, after the Pledge of Allegiance, made an announcement. He said that Beth's mother had come in and had shared that Beth had passed away over the weekend and that she had a choice. Once she knew her time was short, she could stay home, but she decided to go to school. She loved attending school. You couldn't hear a pin drop in our homeroom. And honestly, I was angry at Beth because I thought if I knew my time was short, there would be no way I would return to a school where kids had bullied me. And I was angry with her for that. And then a few days later, I thought, Beth lived her life on her own terms. She was in a choir. Her mother said she loved to sing and she loved the school. And that's why she was on the drill team. And I thought, darn it. If she can live her life at that young age, to have that mindset of, I don't care. This is what I'm going to do. There's nothing I can do about my color if people don't like me because of my color. And I also ran into a situation with my cousins who lived in the inner city who teased me unmercifully because of my demeanor and how I sound. It's like, oh, you think you're white. You're acting white, think you're white. And I'm thinking, no, I know what color my skin is because the white kids tell me all the time. So like I said, once again, I'm between a rock and a hard place. And I'm thinking, you know what? I just have to just accept my skin color, accept the fact that I want to work in the fashion industry. I want to be on Broadway one day. That the theater's my other love too. And that's what changed me. Beth, she's in my heart and I share her story whenever I can. And that was the turning point for me.
Well, it's a powerful story. And I'm sure that Beth had no idea that she was having the impact on others around her as she did on you. And so, with a lot of students that are bullied, whether when they were younger and like you brought up, there is a wide variety of reasons that people are bullied. Most often it is an issue with the bully themselves and not the person that's being bullied. And that's a message that I like to give out to children that are bullied. It's not really your issue, it's theirs, but it doesn't make it any easier for the child that's being bullied. But what are you seeing the trends? How are you seeing the bullying trends and dynamics changed? How have you seen them change over the last 10, 15 years?
My personal opinion is the cyber bullying. That wasn't happening when I was coming up. First of all, bullying is still prevalent. It is still unfortunately, it is still a situation in our schools at all levels.
Well, I'm glad that you just said that, Madonna. I'm glad that you said bullying is still an issue today, because I think that a lot of people feel like it isn't, because a lot of it happens on social media. And so I want you to continue talking about that. But I'm glad that you said that it is still happening. We just might not be seeing it.
Yes. And if you're a parent, your child may not even be telling you, because I never told my parents that I was bullied. I just didn't. And a lot of kids don't. With the cyber bullying, I can remember asking my high school students, I don't know if I clarified that I taught fashion marketing at a high school. I asked them about it, and the majority of them said, well, I don't bother with it. If somebody says something to me online, I just don't go to the site, I just don't address it, which led me to wonder, why are these kids going to a site where they know that people aren't going to say good things about them? Why are they exposing themselves to that? That's a question that I've been turning over in my mind. Why would you do that? A teacher a little while ago reached out to me. Coincidentally, a young man in her math class brought this up to her. And she was glad that she and I had spoken about it before, because she was able to say to him, why do you continue to go to a site where people aren't saying very good things about you? Why are you doing that? And that opened up a conversation between her and this young man. And I thought, well, okay, because that's really what, to me, is the crux of the problem. Also, sometimes parents do not know what their kids are doing online, who they're talking to, and what conversations are, until sometimes it's a little bit too late, unfortunately. But I have suggested to parents who reach out to me that you need to ask your child questions about what's happening in the classroom. Tell me about each of your classmates. I know it sounds like a stretch, like, well, there's 30 kids, but kids are naturally going to tell you about kids who are either mean or nice. Those are the people that they're going to tell you about first, because those people make the most impact on them. And also, I've given information to parents about, know who your children's friends are, and know your child's pecking order within those friends, because you may have a child who is
The
a
bully.
You may have a child who is being bullied by friends. And when you question the friend, when you question your child about, well, do you always do what so-and-so says? Well, yes. Well, what's going on? Tell me about this. what are some of the things that you guys do? Come on, you can tell me. So they, like I said, finding out your child's pecking order. And also, you may not want to ask your child if they're being bullied, but you may want to ask a child, what would you do if you saw a child being bullied? What would you do if you were bullied? What do you think you could do? That opens up conversations too. But just getting back to kids going to these various sites, whether it's Facebook, TikTok, or TokTik, whatever it is.
I mean, I have two teenagers, one almost teenager in my house. So I'm going to have almost 3 teenagers at one time in my home. It's a full-time job to really know what your children are doing, what social media sites they're on. And so I want to ask you too, something that popped into my head as you were speaking about, folks reaching out to you about bullying incidences and what you're doing. And I love the phrase that you use, that your strategies to stop bullies from hijacking your classroom. Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
But, I think that, or I'm wondering if what your opinion is on the fact that, do you think that we've used the term bullying too loosely and that kids have sort of grabbed onto that term? And sometimes people might not take it as seriously when they say they're being bullied, because a lot of times we use the word bullying for instances that really truly aren't a bullying incident. For example, you have 2 children that have the same level of power, the same level of control, and they may just not like each other, and they get into a squabble on the playground, and then one comes in and says, oh, I'm such and such is bullying me. Well, we get the facts, and it wasn't really truly bullying. You two just had a disagreement. It's not the same. So, I wonder, Madonna, if that happens so often that people sort of lose sight of what the true definition of bullying is, and we kind of, we've gotten kind of desensitized to it.
We're on the same wavelength. There was a situation that was brought up to me just the other day about that, and you hit the nail right on the head. It wasn't bullying. It was 2 kids in a situation where one person was being direct with the person. And you're right. People, if they don't get their way, or if somebody doesn't agree with them, all of a sudden they're being bullied. And for somebody like me who has been bullied multiple times.
Yeah. And I think it's so important for teachers and parents to understand this. That's why it's so important. And I usually try to bring all my podcasts come back to this in some way, shape, or form, about the relationships that you build as a teacher with not only your students, but with their friends, with kids in other grade levels, with parents, with other members of the school, because the more immersed you are in the school climate and culture and what's happening around you, the more aware you're going to be of situations, the more you know about, children and their families. And so without that relationship piece there, you may not know what's going on with kids. You may not know if, Susan comes in and says XYZ about a couple of girls, like what happened with you. Obviously that teacher that you spoke to when you were a child was completely oblivious to her surroundings and what was happening right underneath her nose. And so talk a little bit about, you talk about your strategies for not allowing bullies to hijack your classroom. And, I bet you, now that I think about that, Madonna, that's probably changed a lot, because a lot of our classrooms have turned remote, over the last year, but now a lot of people are back in session. So what are some ways that teachers can implement, and how easy is it for teachers to implement some of these anti-bullying strategies into their everyday routines?
How I dealt with it, and I feel that the fact that I was a retail executive in a large city and had been trained to manage people to reach a goal, which is, of course, to sell, and having a background in customer service. When I became a vocational instructor, I knew that I did not want anyone to be bullied in my classroom, because I was thinking back to my gym teacher, and it was not going to happen. those first couple of days of school, because there's a lot of stuff going on, I would go over the policy and the procedures for the district, the building, and then for my classroom. On my board, I had written civility, the word civility and the definition of it, and civility counts. I would explain the importance of developing good listening skills, that you have a chance, that everybody in here is going to have a chance to be listened to, anybody, because you can learn from anyone. I wanted students to say, please, thank you, excuse me, instead of just interrupting somebody. Oh, excuse me. Please, thank you, you're welcome. And we would practice that. Can I borrow a pencil? Yes, thank you, you're welcome. It almost became like a game to them. And I also told them that, teenagers get a bad rap because some just don't demonstrate good manners. They don't say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, but we're going to do that in here. Every morning I'm going to say good morning to you, or good afternoon. I did that for a couple of reasons. One, to gauge the class to see how they were feeling. And also so they would get used to it, because I told them, when you go out in the world, you want a job, you want a loan, you say good morning to somebody, or good afternoon, or good evening. The students took it to heart, and they would tell me the results of them saying thank you, please, to parents and other adults. And they were surprised by how the adults responded to them. Also, that there would be absolutely no teasing or bullying. And I would explain to the students that I know what it looks like. I know what it feels like. I know how sneaky it can be. If I catch anybody bullying and you say to me, oh, I was just joking, I'm going to say to you, no, you weren't. You meant what you said. And I'm going to look you right in the eyes and say it, because it's not going to fly in here. And without going into a big explanation, I would tell them I was bullied, so I know what it's like. It's not going to happen in here, because I do not want anyone hijacking anyone's opportunity to learn. Okay, and that's real important. And I want everybody to be safe. And then I would talk to them about tolerance, that I want to encourage each and every student to realize that everybody learns information differently. So if somebody doesn't catch on to a certain thing as fast as you do, you don't put them down, because people learn things at a different rate. And then I would ask them to raise their hand. How many of you are good at this? Who's good at that? Who's good at this? Okay, we see here that people have different abilities and different skills, and they learn information at different rates, and that teamwork is important. I would, give a little phrase like it'd say, if you need some help with something, just say, team, I need help. And then I had them involved in teamwork and leadership activities too, because I wanted to find out, being a retail executive, I wanted to find out what's what, which students are leaders and which ones are the followers. And I would match up, as far as my seating plan, I would match up kids with empathy who had leadership skills. I would have them seated next to a student who was going to need a little bit more assistance. And I also ask students to be prepared and organized. Before the bell rings, come in, open up your notebooks, sharpen your pencils, and have everything ready to go, because when the bell rings, that's my time. We're ready to rock and roll. Everybody. If somebody said, can I sharpen my pencil once the bell rang? No, somebody would give them a pencil. So there's that teamwork thing coming along. All of this helped to establish high expectations in the classroom, and it also encouraged teamwork. And I also had my little deputies. There were students that if somebody looked like they were getting ready to bully somebody, then it was, you know, you're not supposed to do that. You know, you're not supposed to say that. You know, one of the creative projects, anti-bullying projects, was a fashion show where the regular ed students did a fashion show with the special needs students. And through that process, they bonded with the special needs students and would stick up for them. And I can remember an incident where a football player who was taking my class, he had bonded with one of the students and he invited him over to his table to have lunch. And his friends were like, oh, we don't want to, no, you know, the young person had Down syndrome. And it was like, no, we don't want him sitting at this table. And my student said, you have two choices. You either leave or you can stay, but this kid is coming over to have lunch at this table. And I was so proud to hear that he had taken that stand, because this kid had been bullied. The special needs kids had been bullied all the time. But when you can get regular ed students and other people to not be bystanders who don't do anything, but to have them be active bystanders and say, no, that's not right. Don't bully this person. Don't exclude this person. And I believe that that's something that we need to share with young people. And even gossiping. Oh, good grief. No gossiping was allowed in my classroom. And we even had discussions about gossiping. And I remember a young lady saying, well, can we gossip about somebody who's not in the classroom? I'm like, no, don't do it, because gossiping can lead to bullying and all that sort of thing. Once I established those expectations, I'm going to tell you, within about 2 weeks, everybody was on board. Boom, I had a team ready to go. Kids eventually told me that they would like coming to my class because they felt safe. They knew no one was going to pick on them. Having those expectations of civility will cause you to have a calmer classroom, an environment that's way more productive for everybody in the classroom. And when you put your foot down and you say, no, there will be absolutely no bullying, and the students know it for a fact, then it's not going to happen. And when it does, it's dealt with swiftly. It's dealt with.
Yeah, because like in all reality, it's still very possible that it's going to happen, right? Like this isn't like, and I, you know, we always tell our listeners that whenever I have anybody on that's giving expert advice, you're never going to have an ironclad, or everybody would have already, you know, figured it out and been doing it. You're still going to have the incidents occur, but you have already set up the groundwork. You've set your expectations. You deal with it when it happens, and there's no surprises. You're consistent with your anti-bullying. You do it day to day. So, you know, and I think it's really powerful, Madonna, when you spoke about speaking to your children. And I know that these were high schoolers and they're close to being adults, but they're still, you know, kids, young adults, speaking to your young adults, because I think that that's something that is lacking a lot in today's society of just young adults in general, the manners of greeting others, good morning, good afternoon. And I sometimes, you know, like you said, I think they've been given a free pass. Oh, well, they're just a teenager, but that doesn't mean that we should still not expect the best behavior. And we have an obligation to teach them that behavior, as you were doing.
Exactly.
Even if they're not going to respond with it, you still have to model it for them. So I applaud you for doing those types of things with those students. And I'm fairly certain that a large majority of them came out remembering
Oh, yes. Yeah.
What you taught them. Talk to us a little bit about your Dropkick the Drama. What are some resources? How can teachers reach out to you? How can they get in touch with you? Where can they find you?
They can find me at my website, dropkickthedrama.com. There's a couple of articles that I've written that are on the website, and I've written several other articles about anti-bullying and anti-swearing projects that I've developed that they can also read. I've got a couple of blogs about classroom management and civility.
Well, Madonna Hanna, thank you so much for being on the show with me today. It has been an absolute delight and pleasure talking with you. And for all the folks listening, we will make sure and list all of Madonna's contact information in the podcast description. So if you didn't have a chance to write all that down, we have you covered for that. But thank you so much for being with us, Madonna.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much.
And this is Christy Houle signing off for this episode of Classroom Matters. And don't forget to check out all of our wonderful resources on the Educate.Today website.